Imagine being your father's favorite son, receiving special gifts and having dreams that reveal a glorious future. This is the story of Joseph, a young Hebrew who would become one of the most remarkable figures in the Bible. But before we talk about his rise in Egypt, we must first understand his origins and how God prepared him from an early age to fulfill an extraordinary purpose. Joseph was the second to last son of Jacob, also called Israel, and he had a special relationship with his father. Among all his brothers, he was treated with unique affection, something that became evident when Jacob gave him a colorful tunic, a symbol of honor and distinction. But this gesture awakened envy and resentment in his brothers, who could not stand seeing Joseph as the favorite. In addition, Joseph had dreams that seemed to reveal a future in which his family would bow before him. He dreamed of sheaves of wheat bowing to his sheaf, and later of the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing before him. These mysterious dreams only fueled his brothers' anger, who came to hate him even more deeply. At this point, we can already see how God was shaping Joseph's path. Even in the midst of envy and hatred, there was a greater plan that he did not yet understand. His journey was just beginning, and it would be marked by challenges, betrayals, hardships, and, ultimately, a surprising exaltation. Before we continue this incredible story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to follow the next chapters of Joseph's life and the stories of other biblical characters. Jacob's favoritism and Joseph's dreams created an increasingly tense atmosphere within the family. The brothers' jealousy grew to the point of turning into hatred. They could not bear the idea that Joseph might have a future greater than theirs. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the field. When they saw him from a distance, the brothers conspired against him. Some wanted to kill him, but Reuben, the eldest, persuaded them not to take his life, suggesting they throw him into an empty cistern instead. So they cast Joseph into a dry pit, planning what to do with him. Soon after, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, and Judah suggested selling him as a slave. This way they could get rid of their brother without shedding blood. Joseph, still a teenager, was sold and taken to Egypt, far from his family and everything he had known. To cover up their crime, the brothers stained Joseph's colorful tunic with animal blood and brought it to their father. Jacob, upon seeing it, wept bitterly, believing that his beloved son had been devoured by a wild animal. While Joseph was being taken to a foreign land, his father sank into deep mourning. To human eyes, it seemed like the end of Joseph's dream, but in reality, it was only the beginning of a path prepared by God. Even rejected and sold, Joseph was being led to the place where his dreams would come true. Taken as a slave to Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an important officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. For any young man, this situation could have seemed like the end of all dreams, but Joseph showed something special. Even in the midst of pain, he remained faithful to God and gave his best in every task. The Bible tells us that the Lord was with Joseph, and this made all the difference. His work was so excellent that he quickly gained Potiphar's trust, who made him overseer of his entire household. Joseph, a simple foreign slave, now managed the possessions of one of the most influential men in Egypt. Everything prospered under his responsibility because God blessed his hands. But along with success came new trials. Potiphar's wife began to desire Joseph and repeatedly tried to seduce him. Joseph, upright and faithful to God, always refused, saying, "How could I commit such wickedness and sin against God?" His loyalty, however, only fueled the woman's rage, and she decided to set a trap for him. One day when Joseph fled another attempt, she grabbed his tunic and, with vengeance in her heart, falsely accused him of trying to abuse her. Believing his wife, Potiphar had Joseph thrown into prison. Once again, Joseph seemed to have lost everything. From a house of abundance, he was now behind bars. Yet even there, God remained by his side. His faithfulness was not driven by circumstances, but by trust that the Lord had a greater purpose. Prison could have been the end of hope for anyone, but not for Joseph. Even behind bars, he maintained his faith in God and continued living with integrity. Once again, the hand of the Lord was upon him. The prison warden soon noticed that Joseph was different. He stood out not only for his intelligence, but also for the confidence and peace he radiated. Over time, Joseph gained so much trust that he became responsible for the other prisoners and the tasks of the place. It was as if, even in adversity, God placed him in positions of leadership. It was during this time that two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, were imprisoned. Both had mysterious and troubling dreams that they could not understand. Sensitive to God's voice, Joseph interpreted the dreams with precision. The cupbearer would be restored to his position, but the baker would lose his life, and that is exactly what happened. Before leaving, Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him before Pharaoh, but the man completely forgot. Still, Joseph did not let himself be discouraged. He knew that the dreams God had given him years before had not been in vain. If you also want to better understand God's dreams and plans for your life, I recommend checking out the study Bibles and resources I've left in the description. They can help you deepen your knowledge and strengthen your faith. 2 long years passed since the cupbearer was restored to his position. Joseph remained in prison, but did not abandon his trust in God. Then came the moment when the Lord would make him remembered. Pharaoh had 2 dreams that troubled his mind. In the first, 7 fat cows came out of the Nile and were devoured by 7 lean cows. In the second, 7 full and healthy ears of grain were consumed by 7 thin and withered ears, scorched by the wind. None of Egypt's wise men could interpret the dreams, and the palace was filled with worry. It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew who had accurately interpreted both his dream and the baker's when they were in prison. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. After being shaved and dressed in fresh clothes, Joseph was brought into the presence of the most powerful man in Egypt. Before Pharaoh, Joseph made it clear that the interpretation did not come from him but from God. He revealed that the dreams were a divine message. There would be 7 years of abundance throughout the land, followed by 7 years of severe famine. More than just interpreting, Joseph proposed a solution: to store part of the harvest during the years of abundance, so that Egypt would have provision during the years of scarcity. Pharaoh, impressed by his wisdom and discernment, recognized that the Spirit of God was upon him. And so, from a forgotten prisoner, Joseph was exalted to the position of governor of Egypt, the second most powerful man in the nation. The hand of God had turned his story around in a single day. Under Joseph's leadership, Egypt navigated the 7 years of abundance in an organized manner. Granaries were built in every city, and the people prepared for the approaching period of famine. Joseph's wisdom and faithfulness not only saved the Egyptian nation, but also preserved the lives of many neighboring peoples. When the years of famine began, Canaan, where Jacob and his sons lived, was also severely affected. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy food, not realizing that they would encounter Joseph, the brother they thought they had lost forever. Upon seeing Joseph, the brothers did not recognize him immediately. He remained composed, testing his brothers to see if they had changed, demonstrating patience and wisdom. Joseph remembered the suffering he had endured, but he also understood that everything was part of God's plan. Joseph's first reaction was silence and reflection. He inquired about their father and the youngest brother, Benjamin, observing their behavior and attitudes. Gradually, he perceived the transformation in his brothers, and his heart moved him to act with mercy and forgiveness. This reunion marked the beginning of restoration, not only for his family, but also for his own story. God, who had guided Joseph from the prison to power in Egypt, now showed that he was also in control of family relationships, turning resentment into reconciliation. The most emotional moment in Joseph's story had arrived, the revelation of his identity. After testing and observing his brothers, he could no longer contain himself and said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." Shock and fear gripped the brothers. They did not know how to react to this powerful man, who had once been the rejected brother. But Joseph quickly calmed them, showing compassion and explaining that everything that had happened was part of God's plan. He told them he did not condemn them, for despite their actions, God had turned evil into something that would save many lives. Jacob, upon learning that Joseph was alive and governor of Egypt, could not contain his joy. He left Canaan and brought the entire family to settle in Egypt, in a land called Goshen. There they prospered and were blessed, and reconciliation brought emotional and spiritual healing to everyone. Joseph became an example of forgiveness and trust in God. Even in the face of betrayal and injustice, he maintained his faith, demonstrating that true power lies not in vengeance, but in faithfulness and love that overcomes resentment. This part of the story shows that God not only transforms situations, but also hearts, bringing restoration where there was once conflict. With the family settled in the land of Goshen, Joseph ensured that everyone had sustenance during the years of famine. He continued to manage with wisdom, and Egypt's abundance allowed his family not only to survive, but to thrive. The brothers, who had once conspired against him, now found themselves cared for and protected by Joseph. The story shows how God transforms difficult situations into blessings and how forgiveness opens doors to new opportunities. Jacob and his sons experienced times of stability and security thanks to divine providence and Joseph's leadership. Moreover, Joseph took care of the entire Egyptian population, distributing food fairly and ensuring that no one went through extreme need. He became an example of servant leadership and of how God uses those who are faithful, even in adverse circumstances. Joseph's story also reminds us that the dreams given by God have a perfect timing to be fulfilled. His patience and faithfulness prepared him for each stage, from rejection by his family to power and influence in Egypt. Every challenge served to shape his character and strengthen his trust in the Lord. In the years that followed, Joseph continued to govern Egypt with wisdom, always guided by God. His faithfulness and discernment not only saved lives during the famine, but also solidified his reputation as an upright, just, and blessed man. Jacob, now elderly, realized that God had fulfilled his promises through Joseph. In a moving moment, Jacob blessed each of his sons, recognizing God's hand in the life of all, especially in Joseph's journey. This acknowledgement marked the consolidation of the family and the fulfillment of the dreams God had given Joseph since his youth. Joseph lived many years witnessing his children grow, forming families and multiplying. He remained faithful to the Lord until the end of his life, and his legacy extended beyond his own story to future generations. This part of the story teaches us about patience, perseverance, and the certainty that God fulfills his promises in his perfect timing. Even moments of suffering and apparent abandonment are part of a greater plan, which we often only come to understand with the passing of time. Joseph lived a life marked by faithfulness, wisdom, and unwavering trust in God. Before he died, he gathered his brothers and made a request that when God finally delivered them from Egypt, his bones be carried back to the promised land. This gesture demonstrated not only his hope in the fulfillment of God's promises, but also his faith in future generations. Joseph's legacy goes beyond political achievements or material prosperity. He teaches us about forgiveness, resilience, and the power of trusting God, even in the face of the greatest adversities. From slave to governor, his life shows that no obstacle is too great for those who walk guided by the Lord. Today, Joseph's story inspires millions of people around the world to maintain faith and integrity, reminding us that difficulties can be transformed into opportunities for blessing. He shows us that the path of faithfulness is rewarding, even if the results are not immediate. If you were inspired by Joseph's story and want to deepen your faith and understanding of the Scriptures, check out the study Bibles and resources I've left in the description. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other life-changing biblical stories, and share this video to bring this message of hope to more people.